President Trump will hold a rally tonight in Pennsylvania. Of course, the race is neck and neck, and both sides are leaving no stone unturned in the quest to rack up votes.
There are over 100 surrogates that are out right now. Just this weekend, we are all over the battlegrounds. I myself, I'm in North Carolina at this moment. I flew on a red eye from Las Vegas. And so, yes, we are working everywhere to earn every single vote.
Early in-person voting started in Nevada and Massachusetts today, and in 16 states where Americans can personally cast their ballots, more than 12 million voters have already done so. That's broken records in North Carolina and Georgia, where the polls illustrate the challenge of predicting the outcome of this election. Quinnipiac has Trump leading Harris, while the Wall Street Journal has Harris 1 point ahead. And here's part of a report from NBC's Steve Kornacki on the road to 270 and just how close this race is.
In Michigan, which you see in red right here, the average lead for Trump is 1/10 of 1 point. All right. The average lead for Trump in Nevada, which you see in red right here, is 1/10 of 1 point. And just take a look here from 283, 255. If it flipped over to 1/10 of 1 point for Harris, now suddenly Harris is.
I said close. We have a number of reporters and analysts ready to go over the day's headlines for us. We're going to begin in Detroit, where NBC embed Nnamdi Egwuonwu is awaiting Harris to take the stage at any moment now to kick off day one of early voting there. So, Nnamdi, we had the vice president speaking with reporters in the last hour. They call that a gaggle. It was ahead of the event. What did we hear from her?
Well, she started by emphasizing the reason she's here today, saying that she's going to encourage people to register to vote and vote early. She often says the election is here, so that is a central theme of her message. She also confirmed that she will be traveling on Monday to states across the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, alongside Liz Cheney, as she continues to try to win over more moderate Republicans by encouraging them to put country over party, which is what she says Liz Cheney is doing by supporting her campaign. One thing that's interesting, though, is we saw Harris dedicate the most time in that gaggle, 2 questions at least, to continuing to characterize the former president, Donald Trump, as unfit for office, as unstable. You know, it's something she's been doing throughout the election cycle, but in recent weeks, we've seen her really increase her characterization of him as unhinged, unfit for office, unstable. And she was asked about that increase in attacks. Here's what she had to say during that gaggle.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged, and it requires that response. I think the American people are seeing it, witnessing it in real time. And we must take note of the fact that this is an individual who wants to be president of the United States. And I think the American people deserve better than someone who actually seems to be unstable.
Alex, what we're also seeing from the vice president is her seizing on recent reporting that Donald Trump is, quote, exhausted from the campaign trail. At her events yesterday, she repeatedly expressed the refrain, if he's too exhausted to campaign, is he going to have the stamina for the top job, to be president of the United States? And that has just been fascinating to watch, because we all know when Joe Biden was in office, that was a huge Republican attack line. And we're seeing the tables turn now, and Donald Trump faced some of those attacks himself.
Yeah, 100%. But it is a legit question. So thank you for bringing it up, Nnamdi Egwuonwu. We'll see you again as we stay in the Motor City and talk about the early voting that is now underway. NBC News campaign embed Emma Barnett is in Detroit for us. So, Emma, there's a voter engagement event there where you are. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, it's actually been so much fun, Alex. The Detroit Pistons, the basketball team here, has partnered with the Department of Elections, and they have this event where you scan a QR code, and once you're in this venue, you can get your hair cut, your nails done, you can play basketball like I've been doing over here. And the catch is, once you scan the QR code, you have to take an action. That action can be going across the street, literally right behind me, and casting your ballot. I spoke to some people who did just that this morning. Take a listen.
Life gets busy. Unfortunately, the United States does not have a day where we all just pause and vote and do our duty as citizens. And so I wanted to not have any conflict with my busy schedule. So I wanted to get out early and get it done.
I think you should get out there early because a lot of people have things to do and places to be. So you don't want to get in rush hour traffic or be somewhere where it's a lot of people, might be claustrophobic or something. So get in and vote early.
So those were some voters who went and cast their ballot early here today in Detroit. It is the first day to be able to vote early in Detroit. Not all of Michigan, though. All of Michigan will be able to vote on October 26th. And early voting here in Michigan is actually relatively new. Back in November of 2022, voters actually voted to have a constitutional amendment to allow for early voting here in the state. And early voting is a little bit different than absentee ballot voting, of course, because the process of early voting is very similar to what it would look like on Election Day. So it's been very exciting here, Alex. There are tons of people who are coming, playing basketball, getting their haircut, getting their nails done, and then going across the street to vote. Alex?
I mean, it sounds great, but can I ask, you said this event is targeting Detroit Piston fans. Are there any Detroit Piston players, some superstars there, or are they just looking at you and saying, you know, this is the superstar here playing basketball?
I mean, I love basketball, but I have not seen any Pistons players here yet, but there is a concert later tonight, so there's a lot of action happening here in Detroit, Alex.
Okay, well, game on. Thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate you, Emma.
Game on.
Joining me now, we have Democratic strategist and former advisor to the Obama campaign, Amisha Cross, and Brendan Buck, MSNBC political analyst and former press secretary to VP candidate Paul Ryan. Welcome, guys. Good to see you here. So, Brendan, I do want to get your take to some of these early voting numbers. Nearly 12 million have voted so far. We are already seeing record turnout in North Carolina, especially also your home state of Georgia, where the first day numbers there were more than double the numbers of 2020. Republicans are promoting early voting more this cycle, but is that message reaching? Do you think early votes ultimately will be less heavily Democratic than they typically are?
Well, let me start by saying this is great. It is terrific when people are participating early and getting their votes in, and I think that's a terrific development. I do think Republicans will probably vote early a little more than we're used to, or excuse me, than we've seen recently, probably in spite of Donald Trump, who continues to get in the way of that. But there is a lot of effort being taken sort of below Donald Trump at the actual sort of state party level, and sort of the campaign machinery is really trying to promote it. So I do think there will be some more Republicans. It's hard to tell what to make of it so far. I do have to say, as a Georgian, I think it's great that people are voting a lot. There was a lot of attention given to the voting laws in Georgia recently in the last few years, and a lot of people saying, including the President of the United States, that it was Jim Crow all over again. I think that's been proven to be ridiculous, and I said so at the time, and I'm glad to see that people are out voting. It's easy to vote. It's easier to vote in Georgia than it is in Michigan. What that means in the long term, I don't know, but obviously when there's a lot of early voting that tends to favor Democrats, we'll see if Republicans have gotten their act together to get in there early themselves.
Okay. Amisha, the latest Quinnipiac poll shows Trump with a 7-point lead in Georgia. Politico reports part of the reason could be gains Trump has made with black men. One man said his friends described Trump as funny, entertaining, brave. He said he's impressed by Trump's business experience, adding Harris just seems to have been given everything in her career, which, by the way, is a stunningly misguided sentiment. How can the Harris campaign reach black male voters in the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think she's doing that. She has already showcased what her plan, economic agenda is going to look like for black men, pointing directly towards healthcare concerns that are disproportionately affecting them, whether we're talking about things like colon cancers or things like prostate cancer, where they're typically diagnosed later and die earlier, in addition to increasing small business ownership among them, ensuring that they are, part of the home buying economy personally. But I would argue that if there is a sizable difference between this election in 2020, particularly in the state of Georgia, the marker you should be looking at is white women. They are going to be the movers when it comes to this election cycle. They voted more in 2020 for Donald Trump than they did in 2016, and I would venture to say they're probably going to do the same thing in 2024. Black men, again, vote in a very, very insignificant divergence from black women when it comes to national politics in the Democratic Party. Both Black men and black women are the loyal group for the Democratic Party. They have been since the Civil Rights Movement. That is not going to change anytime too soon. What she is most worried about and what the campaign is most worried about, and I think it should be, is turnout. This is going to be a turnout race. It's going to be a base-to-base turnout race. So she's got to make sure that those younger voters, that those people of color voters turn out. It's not that black men are significantly shifting to Donald Trump. That is not shown anywhere. The bigger fear is that there will be black men who will stay home, particularly younger black men.
So, Brendan, Harris, on her part, has faced criticism and a lot of hand-wringing from Democrats, first for not doing enough interviews and then for not doing enough rallies. NBC reports, quote, Harris appears to be okay with the collective jitters, recognizing that if Democrats fear they might lose, they're more apt to show up at the polls and help her win. Do you agree with that? I mean, 17 days out, how do you see Harris's chances as of today, right now?
I mean, it's a complete coin flip at this point. But I do think that fear of losing is a very good motivator. There was a period of time where it looked like Kamala Harris was on cruise control and that she had this in the bag. And apathy can be dangerous for a campaign. Look, I wouldn't want to be in the position that she has seen over the last few days or last few weeks where polling has shifted towards Donald Trump. Like there's no question that the polling has been at least, in the margins that matter these days, it's been moving towards Donald Trump. And so she needs to find some way to recapture the momentum. Maybe the way to do that is to make sure that people understand the stakes, that this is there's a very real chance that Donald Trump is president again very soon. And I don't think many people appreciate that, and they kind of take it for granted. So I do believe in the better to be scared than overconfident.
So, Misha, we have Michelle Obama, who's going to be headlining a rally with the vice president in Michigan. That'll happen next Saturday. And then there's another one in Atlanta a few days later. But why did she wait so long? Is she being underutilized, or might she be the ultimate surrogate for Harris, so they're saving her firepower for the home stretch?
I think it's more of the latter than the former. And to be quite frank, this isn't that dissimilar from the 2020 election cycle when Michelle Obama came out within weeks of the actual election day to campaign for Joe Biden as well. Typically, your superstar power, Michelle and Barack, are the strongest surrogates for the Democratic Party. Michelle being somebody who has the highest approval rating ever when it comes to a Democrat, obviously a non-elected person. But at the end of the day, we recognize what her power is on the campaign trail. And I think that she's doing this strategically, being mindful that this is a very short window. Kamala Harris has not been the Democratic nominee officially for a very long time. So she was being strategic with the calendar she was given. But I also think that it has been proven time and time again that a lot of folks are not necessarily comfortable talking about who they're voting for or even thinking about that big, important decision until just a few weeks before Election Day.
Yeah. And Brendan, Harris is also rallying with, to Amisha's point, former President Obama next week. And we saw his fiery remarks in Arizona yesterday. He's got another event tonight. How critical do you see both Obamas as being on the trail for Harris? Because she's just trying to energize that coalition. Are they the ones to do it for her?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about motivation at this point. Look, Kamala Harris had to spend a lot of weeks presenting herself as a credible alternative to Donald Trump, introducing herself, making the case that, she is not this out-of-touch progressive that a lot of people feared she might be. And I think she's done that. The window for persuasion is starting to close. Now it's about motivating people. It's about getting people excited. It's about telling people to go and actually cast your ballot. And having superstars like that and getting people's attention, as we've talked about, getting people's attention is harder than ever. Those are two people that could do that. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that's really the focus here. And, of course, Barack Obama is pretty good at lobbing insults at Donald Trump in, I think, a really effective way. He's the best politician in the country right now. So that's always somebody you want on your side in the last closing weeks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask the two of you, Amisha and Brendan, to stick around because you knew it had to happen. And this week it did. How much it will help Kamala Harris's campaign when we're back in 90 seconds.
Introducing Allison's Black Psoriasis. She thinks her flaky gray patches are all people see.
Otezla is the #1 prescribed pill to treat plaque psoriasis.
Introducing Ned's Plaque Psoriasis. He thinks his flaky red patches are all people see.
Otezla is the #1 prescribed pill to treat plaque psoriasis. Ned? Otezla can help you get clearer skin and reduce itching and flaking, with no routine blood tests required. Doctors have been prescribing Otezla for over a decade. Otezla is also approved to treat psoriatic arthritis. Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Serious allergic reactions can happen. Otezla may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Some people taking Otezla had depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur.
With clear skin, movie night is a groovy night. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla.
You could not get on the internet and the phone at the same time.
We're struggling with the crushing cost of housing and healthcare and higher education.
Millennials, born between 1980 and
Former President Trump rallying in Pennsylvania today, fresh off his visit to Detroit, where he looked for a do-over after insulting that city during his last event there. This time, though, he was plagued by technical difficulties, with his microphone cutting out for nearly 20 minutes. NBC campaign embed Jillian Frankel is joining me now from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I hope that's how I say it properly. And Trump's going to be taking the stage there tonight, Jillian. First of all, you were there in Detroit. What was it like, and how is Trump feeling? What's the sense you get from the campaign 17 days out now?
Alex, it was quite the moment on stage in Detroit yesterday. The former president's microphone cutting out mid-speech and the problem persisting for more than 15 minutes. He remained on stage that entire time, at one point going back up to the microphone, trying to speak, and the audio still wasn't fixed yet. Eventually, though, the music did return. He was able to complete those remarks, joking about suing the company if it happened again and not paying his bill. But in terms of the messaging about Detroit in general, he took some heat from Democrats the last time he was in town before yesterday for saying that the entire country could become like Detroit if Harris was elected. Yesterday, we heard him shift that messaging a bit, acknowledging the history of the Motor City and blaming its current situation on leadership and suggesting it's on the verge of a comeback. I want you to hear what he said about those microphones when they did come back on. Take a listen.
So now what happens is I won't pay the bill for this stupid company that rented us this crap. I won't pay the bill, and then we'll have a story that Trump didn't pay the bill to a contractor. No, when they do that kind of a job, don't pay the bill. That's terrible.
And Alex, in terms of his frame of mind, 17 days out from November 5th, at least publicly, he's expressing confidence. On stage yesterday, he said that there could be a landslide victory. Now, he is, of course, expected to be here rallying in Latrobe in just a few hours. We're expecting him to hit Harris on the typical points: the economy, inflation, immigration, as he continues to try to cast her as the incumbent in this race and continues to try to tie her to the Biden administration.
Okay,
Alex?
but important to note, Donald Trump said, 5-6 times there that he's not going to pay the bill for the audio technical work that was done there at that rally. Duly noted. Thank you so much, Jillian, for that. Joining me now, we have Bloomberg White House correspondent Akayla Gardner. Akayla, welcome to you. So this week, we saw that Kamala Harris skipped the traditional Al Smith dinner Thursday. She wanted to begin her barnstorming of the blue wall states over the past few days, where she's been promoting the kitchen table issues like housing costs and helping small businesses grow. Harris is not taking any voters for granted, while the Trump campaign is reportedly confident it's going to win crucial blue wall states. What's your assessment of the campaigns as we hit the final sprint?
Yeah, well, Harris is definitely doubling down on the blue wall. And I hear from most strategists, they feel like that is her best path through Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and that one electoral college vote in Nebraska. And the Sun Belt is looking a lot more difficult. That being said, she's still visiting these states. She's still spending time on the West, in Georgia, as she will this weekend. She's also bringing celebrity power to the trail this weekend, with Usher and Lizzo expected to be on the trail. And this is really a bid to help excite younger voters, to really highlight the support that they have from Hollywood. And the challenge that Harris has really faced is she had this huge momentum when she entered the race, fundraising pouring in, social media buzz, and now she's in a much more difficult phase of the campaign where she's really focusing on undecided voters, trying to shake loose some of those people who could still be thinking about whether they sit out or they go to the polls in November.
Yeah, but by most accounts, the campaign knew that that incredible balloon of support was not going to last. What about in a recent article in which you write that Harris is still struggling to distinguish herself from President Biden? In one interview last week, Harris said she couldn't think of anything she'd do differently than Biden, though then in another, how her presidency would be different. That's what she described. So here's both Harris and Biden talking about the difference between administrations. Bottom line, Harris steered clear of criticizing President Biden. But should she also be clarifying any different legislative priorities?
That is really the challenge here. I think Democrats really cringed at that answer that she gave on The View, where she said she's not sure there's much she would do differently from Joe Biden. And yet I've talked to the Blueprint, which is a Democratic polling strategist that has really focused on this issue in particular. And they say Harris should really separate herself on key legislation. Most voters right now feel like the country is moving in the wrong direction. And that is a huge part because of the economy. Also, immigration continues to be a huge issue in swing states. So these are two places where she could really draw a distinction. But I think the issue here is Harris really shows a personal conviction when it comes to criticizing Biden. She acknowledged that in an interview with your colleague this week, Peter Alexander, and she really said it's not tradition for vice presidents to be critical of their president. So she's clearly uncomfortable with this, and yet Democrats say it's something that she needs to do to win, because Joe Biden is frankly unpopular.
And look, she has been on a whirlwind media tour. She's appeared on the traditional news shows and popular talk shows and podcasts that have been aimed at the niche audiences. How effective has that been so far? Is this the new blueprint for presidential campaigns as we, by the way, are watching her? She's taken the stage there in Detroit.
Yeah, well, she's really targeting voter coalitions here, right? She's targeting Black voters, Latino voters, young voters, women. She's really trying to get into these niche places because the campaign acknowledges media environment is so fragmented and they feel like they need to go to places like podcasts, like social media to really reach people. And this week she did that Fox News interview, which drew over 7 million viewers there, which was really surprising, more than her CBS interview, more than her interview with ABC, The View. And I think that was really huge to acknowledge that she was going into not friendly territory. And that's a criticism that I've heard from some voters. They felt like they want to hear more from her. They want her to be more forthcoming. And I think that was an interview that really struck with some people, especially undecided people, independents, and even some Republicans, which we're seeing her really make a concerted effort to reach.
Yeah. Kayla, do me a favor, stick around, everybody. We're going to take you and let you listen to Kamala Harris. And let me just say my eagle-eyed EP read what's on that T-shirt. It says Detroit versus everybody. Let's take a listen.
As a community, as a coalition, we have the power to make the decisions about the direction of our country. And we know this election is about two very different visions for our future. Ours focused on the future, focused on our young leaders, focused on possibility, understanding the ambitions and the aspirations and the dreams of the American people. Understanding, like the people of Detroit, we have grit, we have excellence, we have history. And it's about looking in the face of a perfect stranger and seeing a neighbor and understanding we are all in this together. We all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we are going to fight for this country we love. We are in this to win it. And we know, look, if the race is tight, it's going to be hard work, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. And we will win. And we will win. So you all are here. here taking time out of your busy lives and all your other obligations, and I thank you so very much. And I know...
All right, everyone. So what she's doing is actually reflecting those signs behind her. She's encouraging people to get out there and vote early. That has been the big message of the day. And indeed, Michiganders are able to vote effective today. We're going to keep listening to her. But one more question to you, Akela, because as we're in the final stretch right now, Harris is clearly increasing her sharp attacks on Donald Trump. She's warning of the dangers that he poses to this country as the future president. She's airing video clips of Trump's most incendiary rhetoric at her rallies, will focusing on protecting democracy and actually showing Trump in his own words, sharing his vision or whatever it is he's talking about. Will that effectively create an opening with independents and moderate Republican voters? What do you think?
Well, we've really seen her ramp up these really sharp attacks on Donald Trump. That is not something that we have always seen from her. I've frankly been in the pool with her, and at times she would sort of punt questions. Talking about Donald Trump's comments, she would really sort of try to avoid them. But that has really changed as we get closer to Election Day. But something that I've heard from Republican pollsters is anti-Trump rhetoric doesn't always work. People think that it's politicized. They're still more focused on those issues, on the economy, on how Harris is going to affect their wallets. And at the same time, she is doing those things. She is still talking about how she wants to support small businesses, how she sees taxes. These are still things that she is still trying to appeal to. So she's trying to do both here. She's talking about democracy, which is huge for the base and ramping up people like young voters. So she's trying to really do both things here.
Okay, Akela Gardner, thank you so much. Good to see you. Meantime, you've all heard about the enthusiasm gap, and there might be one this time around, but it's for a candidate, not for voters.
With Salesforce Einstein AI.
Einstein, how can I increase fan engagement?
Everyone at Formula One can be an Einstein. Because with unified customer data and trusted AI, it's easy to personalize messages that wow. Every fan, everywhere, all at once. Now everyone's an Einstein with Salesforce.
Check out Mahomes' top 3 plays of the day. He scrambles into T-Mobile to get that new iPhone 16 Pro on us. It's a little shimmy, shimmy, shake. What you think, Kyle?
It's like he's chasing an ice cream truck.
Ice cream! He got his iPhone 16 Pro, the first iPhone built for Apple Intelligence.
Cuz holding it up like a baby lion.
Homie takes those T-Mobile savings and calls it a day.
Respect.
Now at T-Mobile.com, get the new iPhone 16 Pro on us. And families can save 20% every month versus the other big guys.
That first spark of an idea, watching it travel, build momentum. Working like this feels intuitive. Every thought, plan, or detail seamlessly intertwine. And no matter where I am, or how I choose to work, it's all here, on one single platform.
Get your paper tablet at remarkable.com today.
We can just have someone on Fiverr do it. It's no big deal.
Hiring freelancers just for small tasks is like hiring Martha Stewart as an...
Here's your coffee.
Oh, best intern ever.
Sometimes great talent is right under your nose.
What's your name again?
Want to ditch the junk for healthier kid swaps? Thrive Market can help. We're the online grocery store that delivers thousands of healthier options they'll love. From low-sugar snacks to high-protein staples, all up to 30% off. Here you'll find high-quality, organic, and sustainable brands vetted by our in-house experts who restrict 1,000-plus ingredients. So you can shop worry-free, knowing you'll never sacrifice on quality or taste. No more picky eaters here. Join today and get a free gift and 40% off your first order.
There's something powerful, freeing even, about starting again. No expectations, no race on the calendar, not losing sleep over that marathon I may never run. Today, it's just about me. Because happiness isn't about some finish line. It's about the journey.
When you start a new business, payroll, benefits, and HR are all part of the deal. But with Gusto, they're no big deal. Whether you're paying your first employee, trying to keep your business compliant, Or you want to start offering benefits like health insurance, workers' comp, or 401k. Gusto helps you take care of your team so you can take care of business. Join 300,000 businesses at gusto.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with Noom, like Clay Vossier, who discovered behavior change is the key to losing more weight on a GLP-1.
When I was prescribed the GLP-1, I did not know how important protein or any nutritional value was to my diet. It's a psychological thing, too. They're definitely teaching how to live a better, healthier lifestyle. Noom is teaching me the habits so I do not have to be on weight loss meds forever. I'm Clay Vossier, and I have lost 35 pounds with Noom.
Get Noom GLP-1, now available at Noom.com.
31 past with breaking news in the war in the Israel-Hamas war. While there are dimming hopes of a potential ceasefire deal following the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Both Hamas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vow the war is not over. Hamas said it will not release any of the remaining hostages until Israel fully withdraws from Gaza. Joining me now, former State Department senior advisor and former White House senior director in the Obama administration, Nayyera Haq. So, Nayyera, look, despite Israel hunting for him since last October 7th and the attacks, Yahya Sinwar's death came about in an extraordinary stroke of luck. Can you talk about how the IDF got him and how much of it was likely a slip-up by Sinwar and how much can be attributed to Israeli persistence?
I think a combination of both, Alex. For the last year, it's been assumed that Sinwar has been hiding underneath the tunnels, trying to stay away from all aspects of the operation, whether it be the Hamas operation or the IDF invasion. And he was ultimately caught and killed by a targeted assassination strike with two other Hamas leaders. There were no hostages or other Israeli shields, which has often been the challenge in trying to get to Hamas leadership, is they've been using the hostages and moving with them. So in that sense, it's been a surprise. The challenge, though, with the narrative now being built around Yahya Sinwar is that the Arab world is split. You have now Saudi Arabian pundits and media who, of course, that monarchy had wanted to establish a relationship with Israel. They are talking about Sinwar as a terrorist leader, and it's a good thing that he's dead because now this idea of a peaceful resolution can move forward. But then you have others in Arab language media trying to say that, oh, look, this guy who has been a target not only escaped for a full year, but ultimately went down fighting like a martyr.
And to this point, many have suggested this could be some sort of a turning point in the war. But then you have Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's vowing to keep fighting. And Hezbollah says it will escalate the war with Israel. So what do you think is more likely to happen and why?
Yeah, it should be a turning point because now that not only have they lost their political leader who was assassinated in Iran, but now Sinwar, who essentially had the scary death grip on the organization. He has now been killed. That should have opened the door for hostages to be released, a new set of negotiations. Biden weighed in, encouraging this being an opportunity for peace. But unfortunately, Netanyahu has been encouraged by Donald Trump to keep on going and fighting, and that this is actually an opportunity to escalate. So these small pockets and opportunities for coming to the negotiation table often get undermined by leaders like Trump, or in this case, Netanyahu, who have different goals in mind.
Okay, but let's go back to who's in the White House now in a current administration, that being President Biden, who is urging an end to the conflict. Let's take a listen to that.
The death of the leader of Hamas represents a moment of justice. He had the blood of Americans and Israelis, Palestinians and Germans and so many others on his hands. I told the Prime Minister of Israel yesterday, let's also make this moment an opportunity to seek a path to peace, a better future in Gaza without Hamas.
What are the chances Netanyahu will be pressured by the greater global community, let alone the United States, to seek peace? And if so, can it be achieved now, or will Hamas just regroup under the direction of potentially Yahya Sinwar's brother, Mohammed, who is said to be even more hardline than his brother?
The argument that will be used by Netanyahu is that the fight is not over and that Hamas is more than just one individual. It's a network, it's an ideology, and Netanyahu will connect it back to Iran, which also brings back the challenges that Israel is facing in Hezbollah. So Netanyahu's interest is tying this all together and arguing that effectively this needs to be dealt with in a tactical, kinetic way in war. The United States and other world leaders, though, do have this opportunity to point out that technically Israel has met the goal of decimating Hamas's leadership. They occupy the territory at the moment, and that they have an opportunity to get the hostages back. That the hostages, even though it's a desperate situation, that ultimately is where the Israeli people also get engaged and involved. It becomes less about how you go about fighting a war and more about how do you actually make the Israeli people safe again.
Yeah, absolutely. Naira Hack, thank you so much for weighing in. You've noticed it, I've noticed it, but have voters? The one thing about Donald Trump's latest speeches and how concerning it is, next.
Vehicle breakdowns are costly.
It started making some really weird noises.
If your check engine light comes on tomorrow, the repair could easily cost thousands.
Is that transmission?
But with Endurance, you could never pay out of pocket for a costly repair again.
They covered a $14,000 engine replacement.
$1,400. Endurance paid it.
Who's going to pay for your next car repair? You or Endurance?
Call right now to get $300 off any plan. Call now.
When my hair started to thin, I thought, am I going to have any hair left?
After I gave birth, my hair wasn't even thin, it was gone.
When I spoke to my dermatologist, he immediately pointed me in the direction of Nutrafol.
It's 100% drug-free and clinically tested.
Within 3 months, my hair was fuller.
It's longer, it's so much thicker.
I had more scalp coverage.
It was so nice to be noticed for my hair after hiding it for so many years.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
I've always loved election nights. Every election night reveals a story about the candidates, about the campaign that we just watched, but it reveals a story about the voters who decided the election, what mattered to them, what didn't matter to them, what they prioritized. The presidential election is America's family photo. We take one every 4 years, and we can look back over time and we can see who and what the country was and where it was just on the presidential election.
What's causing the rise in book banning? On my podcast, Velshi Banned Book Club, I speak with authors of banned books to try and find out. Season 2 of Velshi Banned Book Club. Listen now.
The Harris campaign pouncing on renewed scrutiny of former President Donald Trump's mental state as Trump's allies worry his rambling and often incoherent speeches caused the campaign message to get lost. Harris called him unstable and unfit for the presidency in a recent interview and responded to Trump abruptly ending a town hall to spend about 40 minutes or so playing music from his personal playlist while swaying on stage. You see it right there. Harris shared a video of that event with a caption reading, "Hope he's okay." I want to bring back Amisha Cross and Brendan Buck. So, Amisha, I'll let you have a first stab at this one because President Obama commented on Trump's recent antics as well. Let's take a listen to what he said.
You would be worried if your grandpa was acting like this. No, I'm not joking. You would, right? You'd call up your cousins and you say, "Have you noticed?"
So have you noticed a difference in Trump's speeches and behavior over just the last few months? And are voters taking notice?
Absolutely. He told us it's the weave. I don't know what the weave is. It sounds like he is having some mental lapses. He is not as sharp as he used to be. A lot of his language is a lot more elongated because he's taken us around the world and back and losing himself in the meantime. I think that people are taking notice. What I wonder is why, with the exception of this network, why media isn't taking more notice. Because I do recall, I think all of us are old enough to remember how President Biden was nailed to the wall after that first debate and the debacle that it was. However, Donald Trump can't remember how many days out we are of the election. He's saying we're 2 months out, and everybody knows that that's not factually correct. This is a guy who is invoking people who are no longer with us. They've joined the Lord or went in the other direction. I don't know. When he's speaking on the campaign trail, this is a guy who's dancing off to himself. He doesn't know what he's talking about most of the time. And I think that he does deserve the same level of attention and ire that many people gave to President Biden just a few months ago. But it does not seem to be happening. And it's really frustrating to watch this because the man has come out and said, you know, in talking about Supreme Court justices, well, there's a reason why you choose younger people. Who on earth would choose an older person to be a Supreme Court justice? I would ask the same when it comes to him at this point. The man is old as all get out, but he's also, it's not just age, it's the fact that he clearly is not there. He is not, his wherewithal has disappeared. This is not the Donald Trump of 2016. It's not the Donald Trump of 2020. Hell, it's not the Donald Trump of 2 seasons ago. So we're watching this devolve in real time. This is dementia dawn. And I think we all have to be honest with ourselves about what we're watching.
I have to say, watching the video, I'm going to borrow a word from Tim Walz. It's kind of weird. I mean, Brendan, one of these eyebrow-raising moments that Obama was referencing there was this also bizarre and delusional answer to a question about January 6th at a Univision town hall. Listen to this.
Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands.
I mean, did you check out the expressions of the audience members there? That one woman was doing this and then went, she kind of sat up when he said something weird. Do Trump's appearances and lack of focus on issues, do they indicate how seriously or not that he's taking voters' concerns, Brendan?
Look, if I was advising the Harris campaign, and I'm not, I would focus a lot more on that January 6th answer than I would about him swaying on stage. I don't think there is a persuadable voter in America who doesn't think that Donald Trump does weird things and says outrageous things. I'm sorry, that's just sort of baked, and people know that, and they're willing to overlook it. His actions and inactions on January 6th it's one of the most shameful days in American history. And every American who loves this country should look at what happened that day and say, never again. We can never allow that to happen. I think every time he opens his mouth on this topic, it makes people squirm like that woman just did. That should be their focus. Abortion, they clearly have an advantage there. What I'm worried about if you're the Harris campaign, what you have to be worried about is we get into this trance just with Donald Trump while he's swaying and we're watching him and the issues get lost. January 6th and other issues are much more important than the weird thing he does every day.
Okay. Well, listen, never again does not apply to the two of you. I expect to see you next weekend, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you so much. And today, black bikers in Philly hit the roads in historically black neighborhoods, hoping to get out the vote. Pennsylvania's voter registration deadline is Monday, and we have NBC's Tremaine Lee highlighting things for us in Philadelphia. So, Tremaine, welcome back. How are these bikers hoping to encourage voters on the fence to come out and cast their ballot?
That's right, Alex. Black men vote and black bikers vote. Teamed up with Reverend Waller at Enon Tabernacle Church, which is the biggest black church in Philadelphia, to really send a message that black men are united, that despite some of the narrative that's been floating around the political space for a while, that black men are engaged. And for those that are on the sidelines, those that are not engaged, they want to send a message that, like, come into the fold, participate in the process, help your families, help yourself, and help your community. I spoke to Joe Paul, who is the executive director of Black Men Vote, and he said this. Check it out.
We know the road to the White House comes right through Philadelphia. We also know that black men are going to be the difference makers in this election. So one of the things that we've been doing is being intentional about going into the communities through our Shop Talk program, geo-targeting areas where there's low propensity, unregistered black men, to make sure they understand their civic engagement, their right to vote, and the importance of coming out.
Black Men Vote set a goal of registering 100,000 black men. And so far, they tell me they're 95% there. In Philadelphia alone, they say they registered 60,000 black men to vote, Alex.
That is great numbers. Thanks for sharing, Tremaine Lee. Appreciate that. Preparing for Doomsday. Next, the book that many White House advisors do not want Donald Trump to see.
1 second, they're a neighbor you like. The next, they're a neighbor you trust.
Got you, no problem.
1 second, you're worrying about your home. And then, thanks to ADT, there's a lot less to worry about. Feel secure enough to let others in with Trusted Neighbor from ADT.
Why do couples choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
I need it a little cool.
And I need it a lot of cool.
We're both cool like that.
Sleep Number does that. Sleep up to 15 degrees cooler on each side. 9 out of 10 couples sleep better on a Sleep Number smart bed. Smart beds start at $9.99, exclusively at Sleep Number.
October celebration in Slotomania. The #1 free slots game starts with 10. 10 days of amazing benefits and gifts. For 10 days, we'll give you 10 free spins on the most favorite slots. Multiply your daily bonus by 10. Multiply your wins on your first 100 spins. And so much more. Download Slotomania now and start your 10-day celebration.
There are lots of Americans who don't see themselves in your plans. What do you say to them? How do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share, but they're not leaving our country? What would a Harris administration do for those communities who've taken in many, many legal immigrants, but are at capacity?
Now to new concerns over a presidential doomsday book. In a new Time magazine article, former Trump White House advisors are sounding an alarm about the dangers of Donald Trump in a potential second term having access to extraordinary emergency powers. Those powers include suspending habeas corpus, which gives anyone arrested the right to appear before a judge or secure bail, putting parts of the country under military control, imposing martial law, blocking Americans from traveling overseas, and restricting telecommunications. Joining me now, Brian Bennett, author of this article and Time Magazine senior House correspondent. Brian, welcome. I understand that you interviewed more than a dozen national security officials from current and previous administrations. That includes 5 of them being from Donald Trump's. Tell us what you found out about the Doomsday Book and what's in it.
So we talked about the doomsday, but particularly people who had worked for Donald Trump in the national security arena when he was president. They're concerned about him learning the specifics of the extraordinary presidential powers that are available to him under extreme circumstances, like the event of a major catastrophe, a nuclear attack, for example. And these powers are outlined in a secret book inside the White House that's known as the Doomsday Book. The technical term for it is the Presidential Emergency Action Documents. And it's a stack of papers that's kept in a secure location on the White House grounds. And what it does is it's taken 40 years of legal review and legal opinions to look at what powers does a president have based on the Constitution and laws that have been passed to keep the government going under extreme circumstances like Congress gets completely wiped out or there's a nuclear attack on a major American city. And there's concern that Trump, if he becomes president again, would exaggerate a catastrophe and try to turn to these powers in order to extract revenge against rivals or exercise presidential power in an extraordinary and unusual way.
And you also wrote, Brian, that when Trump was in office, his national security staff worked to keep him from learning the full extent of these interpretations of presidential authority. They were concerned that he would abuse them then, let alone what could come. Who was involved in this effort? I'm just curious, who was like, we've got to keep these details from Trump? And what was their biggest concern about him?
So as I said, I talked to about 5 people who had worked closely with Trump on his national security staff in the White House. And they had said that they had intentionally tried to make sure that Trump wasn't briefed on these particular powers that are to be used in the event of a nuclear attack or for continuity of government. So I spoke with Mark Harvey, for example. Mark Harvey was a career official on Trump's NSC. He was in charge of resiliency policy at the NSC, which is thinking about how the country could move through such a devastating attack. And he actively tried to prevent other officials from letting Trump know exactly what powers would be available to him under circumstances like that, because he was nervous that Trump would exaggerate a situation and use that. And there were others that joined him, and they even tried to block people who were seen as MAGA loyalists or Trump loyalists who might try to do an end run around the system to get briefings to Trump to let him know what was in those documents.
Yeah, I noted you also spoke with Miles Taylor, with whom I'll be speaking about this very thing tomorrow. He, again, had been the chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security at the time in the Trump administration. So Trump's rhetoric around using the military to go after his perceived enemies, that has really intensified in recent weeks. Do you get this sense, Brian, that he's aware now of what's in the Doomsday Book?
So talking to people who had worked with him and are still in touch with aides to Trump, I say that Trump's inner circle is aware of what's in the Doomsday Book and the extent of these powers, and that's made them, increasingly alarmed that it's one of the things that Trump could turn to when he becomes president. I mean, Trump himself, of course, has said he wants to be a dictator on day one in order to close the border and to expand oil drilling. He also has said vindictive things about his political enemies, that he wants, and in amplified messages, that he wants to put them in jail. And so these are a menu of options that the president could turn to. It would require him, exaggerating and bending the truth about what's happening in the country in order to use them. But it's something that people who have worked closely with him are concerned that he could use.
It is an extraordinary article in Time magazine, everyone. It also delves into the way Congress is looking at all of this, and they've got a lot of questions and concerns. So I suggest people read it. Brian Bennett, well written and well discussed. Thank you so much. Breaking news, what we know about the power grid failure that left the entire country of Cuba in the dark.
Not you again. I can't talk to a doctor about this. It's embarrassing. ZocDoc? You're right. I bet they deal with this all the time. What about Dr. Anderson? Okay. Dr. Finley really puts you at ease. And she takes my insurance, too. Let's do it.
You've got more options than you know. Book now.
I'm gonna miss you, too.
Where'd you get those shoes? The ones that are in it to win it. That always make the grade. And take the words out of office seriously. A shoe for every you at DSW.
The Vote. It's as American as apple pie, as stars and stripes and spacious skies. It's iconic.
Got the flag up now.
Patriotic. It's America's favorite pastime. The Vote is as American as you.
A plan from HomeServe pays for the covered repair cost for water lines, and we send a qualified contractor. The American dream of owning a home doesn't need to be a nightmare.
Sleep well with HomeServe.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $7.99 a month.
Call 1-800-355-9395 or visit homeserve.com.
With Chime, I get to decide when I get paid. My pay lets me get up to $500 of my pay when I need it. There's no interest, no credit checks, no mandatory fees. And that's why I Chime. Join me at Chime.com and get paid when you say.
The Daymaker pant by Public Rec. More comfortable than jeans, more stylish than sweats. With the Daymakers, you can choose your waist and length sizes to guarantee a perfect fit. Now comfort looks good.
Breaking news, and this is one heck of a story. Cuba is working to restore power to the island after the national electrical grid collapsed again today for the second time in as many days. Journalist Ed Augustin is joining me from Havana, Cuba. Okay, Ed, can you begin to describe what it is like having an entire country without power and what happened?
Well, I think the best way to describe that is if we do a thought experiment. Perhaps close your eyes and imagine what it's like to live without power for over 24 hours. What does that mean practically? You go to your fridge to get some food, perhaps a bit of meat, some fish, eggs. They're rotted because there's no power. You pick your kids up from school if you were able to communicate with your husband or your wife or your partner because telecommunications are bad because there's no power. Bring them home, ask them to do their homework. They can't. There's no light. Finally, you go to bed. This is the sweltering Caribbean. It's difficult to sleep. You want an air conditioning unit or a fan, not just to keep cool, but to keep away mosquitoes that carry diseases like dengue and orepucha. Well, you're going to be having quite a worrying sleep light life because there's no power. The reality of living without power seeps into every nook and cranny, to be a little bit overly poetic, of one's soul, and it really drives one mad. And here at the Havana Bureau today, we've been speaking to Cubans that are wrestling with just how to exist and survive and keep on going in this context. It's a very, very difficult situation for the majority of this island that has approximately 10 million people. What happened? Yesterday morning at 11 o'clock local time, there was a failure at the main power plant in Cuba. That led to a nationwide blackout. The state communicated or tried to communicate with the population that it was getting power back online, and towards yesterday evening that was starting to happen around the country. There was some hope. But then today at about 6 o'clock in the morning, once again, bam, it's out. It went out. nationwide power cut again, and slowly, and I hesitate to say surely, but slowly, power is coming back in some parts of the island. The eastern part of the island now has some power. The central part of the island now has some power. Interestingly, Havana, the capital, where I'm speaking to you from, is actually the part of the country at the moment with the worst power situation, which is exactly what the authorities don't want, because they, as many nation-states, prioritize people in the capital because they don't want things to kick off. Power is gradually coming back in Havana, but from the outskirts in. How did the country get to this state? The analysts I speak to point to two main reasons. First of all, US sanctions. They've been ratcheted up over recent years, first by the Trump administration, but also by the Biden administration that promised to remove them, but didn't. And those sanctions are called maximum pressure sanctions. The clue's in the name. They're designed to make it difficult for the Cuban state to buy things, including fuel, on the market to keep power stations on, and also to maintain the decrepit, frankly, power stations. Secondly, the failed plan, or the failed attempt, or failed half attempt, of the ruling Communist Party here to reform their economy and to what they would say to update socialism. Those two factors, cold geopolitical logic from the US and ineptitude, frankly, by the Cuban government, have created a perfect storm whereby Cubans, now millions on the island, are living without power and everything that entails.
It's an extraordinary